Good morning, everybody. Hi, my name is Keren, and I'm here this morning to do a little sew with you, and we're looking at making a hot water bottle cover. While people are starting to arrive, I'll just say a big hello to those of you who are coming via replay. I know this time isn't the best time for everybody, so you can catch it later as well. So hello if you're on catch up. You will have to excuse me for being a little bit croaky. I'm just going to wait for a few people to come and join. So if I'm a bit sniffly, a bit croaky, I'm afraid I've had a cold. So hello, great, Laura is with us. Hello everybody joining. So you'll have to excuse my cold. I'm afraid this week, I'm hoping today is not as embarrassing as a concert I was at on Thursday, and I wanted to cough, and I was on the second row, and it was a really quiet place of the concert, and I was so desperate to cough and I couldn't leave without making a right state. Hi Susan. So I sat there and there were tears streaming down my eyes because I was desperate to cough and I knew that I would disrupt the concert. So Steve just said, oh, they probably thought you were being emotional for the music. So I'm hoping that I don't have coughing all the way through today, but if I do, please forgive me. Hi Linda. Right, I think there's a few of us joined, so we will crack on with this morning. This morning we are doing hot water bottle covers. And it's a really, really easy and a super useful project. And we are going to be using Thermolam. Thermolam is a brilliant, brilliant product, useful for lots of things, but particularly because of its insulating properties. If any of you have got any good ideas of things that you can use with Thermolam, do pop them into the comments. One of my friends got in touch with me, good morning Grace, and said that she wasn't sure where to get Thermolam from. So if you're ever wanting to know where to get products from, pop onto the Vlieseline website, and along the top you will see stockists. I think it's, yeah, it just says Store Finder. You had to write this down. Store Finder. Click on Store Finder, and if you scroll down, you can find the country that you're in, and it will bring up a whole host of different stockists. And if you have a look at the edges of each of the details, you'll see there's a little bit to click called Open Shop. And with Open Shop, that will take you through to their online store. So if you don't have anybody near you that you can go and visit, a local haberdashery, then check out the Vlieseline website for all of the stockists. Good morning, Janet. I'm not sure about the Arga covers. I don't have an Arga myself. I presume it would do, but if somebody who knows more about Argas could comment, that would be amazing. I'll certainly have a look into that for you afterwards. If it's just something to protect the top that you're not actually directly putting heat on, then I would have thought that would have been perfect, but I'm not an expert on Argas, so somebody else who is much more knowledgeable hopefully will be able to answer that one for you. Right, so we've got our lovely Thermolam. And I said when I gave you the promo a bit earlier on that actually you can use lots and lots of different types of fabric, but I'm choosing to do cotton because it's easier. Thermolam, if I show you here, you'll see that it's actually a really substantial project. It's product. It's super warm and fluffy, and it's got a good thickness to it. So that's why I'm saying cotton, because otherwise you'll end up with a really, really thick sandwich. The other thing that we're not going to do is give you a template, because I'm actually going to show you how to create your own. Now, if you're a beginner and you've never done this before, do not worry. Oh, Grace, yeah, placemats, coasters, it is an amazing product, isn't it? So I've got some here. Now, the other reason I didn't give a template is because in our house alone, we have 3 different sized hot water bottles. So I didn't want to give you one, you print it out and you think it doesn't fit my hot water bottle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the camera position, and we'll show you exactly what we're going to do. So just bear with me while I change. Right, here we go. Now I'm using a small one, a small hot water bottle, just because that was the easiest one to fit into the camera angle. So what you're going to need is I've used cardstock. You can use paper by all means, but what I tended to find is once I've got a template, I try and keep hold of it so I don't have to replicate it twice. So I've just got 2 pieces of A4 and I've just sellotaped it on the back. You can sellotape it afterwards, but if you sellotape both sides, you'll end up struggling to get pen over unless you're using biro or something. So we've got our piece of paper or cardstock, and we've got our hot water bottle. Try and position it centrally onto there, and then this is what we need to be able to make the templates. Now, for this project, I'm using 3 centimeters. But please forgive me if you only work in inches. I'll try and refer to both types. It's going to be about 1 1/4 inches. Now, the reason we need so much, I mean, we're going to be using a normal seam allowance, so 1/4 inch, 1/2 centimetre seam allowance. But we've got the Thermolam, and we've got 2 layers. You've got the outer layer fabric and you've got the inner layer fabric. And the other thing you've got to remember is when you're putting the hot water in, obviously it's going to increase the size of the hot water bottle. So you need to make sure that you've got plenty of room. Otherwise you'll end up with a really tight situation there. So either a square, or if you've got a compass and you can make roughly 3 centimeters, don't worry if it's slightly more or slightly less, it's not a big issue. But this is, I found this was a good size. This I just used the bottom of a glue bottle to draw around because I could not find a compass no matter how much I looked. So if you're just going to use a square, all you would do, and because this is a little bit thick, I found it easiest to just press it down as you go. So you're going to literally put your square or your circle. The circle is definitely easier. And you're just going to make little marks. So if you're doing the square, you would go to the next bit there, make a little mark. And when you come to the corners, just take it around like this. So you're literally putting little marks all the way round. If I was using my circle, you can see it's actually much easier because you can sort of roll your circle. You're going to take it to the edges. You're going to take it all the way around. Do not worry about it not being absolutely precise. You're going to need the same height on the top. So what you can do is you can draw a shape like this. And I'm being super speedy because this is not terribly interesting. But you're going to go all the way around both sides and you're going to trace it all the way around. Now, this is where we talk about the differences in templates. If you have a little look at the 2 styles that I've got here, you can see this follows the curves of the shape. This one here doesn't. Now, because you've got quite a bit of thickness with the 2 layers of Thermolam and you've got your fabrics going, what you'll find is even if you cut into the corners, notches, which we'll talk about that later, you're still going to have a little bit of bulk here. And if you're a beginner sewer, what I would really, really recommend is that you have a gentle curve. If you're an experienced sewer, then you don't need to worry about that. But see here where I've got this bit here, where I've followed the actual shape. What I would do is I would just literally take it down so that you've got a very, very gentle curve. Hopefully that is going to make sense to you. So you're going to go all the way around. You're going to draw all the lines together. You're not going to do it like this because obviously you need it nice and neat. Now the second thing that you need to do once you've gone all the way around and you've got a shape is if you're wanting to get the best sort of result, then you want a symmetrical template. So what I would do then, let me just do the other side roughly so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's do a little bit there. Okay, so we've got the outer shape or the outer width. So if I take this off now, what I need to find is just the center. So I would just get a ruler and I'm going to try and find the center. Okay, it's about 8.5, so it's about 4 1/4. So I would find the center, and this is the important thing, is to fold it in half. So I've got my center line there. I'm going to fold it in half, and obviously you're going to do this much more carefully than me. So you've got your center bit there, and then I'm just going to cut out using half of it, because obviously if I cut out, then I'm going to have a symmetrical template. So that is going to get us to the point where we have this. You can see here, when I've cut it out, I've got my first piece there. Now that's going to give us the front or the back, depending on how you want to do it. But you also need to create 2 more pieces, which I'm calling it the back, but depending on the how you bake up your hot water bottle cover, you may decide that this is the front and you're going to make that really beautiful. So to get the other pieces, you're going to draw around, get another piece of template paper. So I would get another piece, I would draw around, and then what I would do is I'm going to stop. So I draw around the edge here until I'm about 2/3 to 3/4 round. So I'm going to do this really, really messily. Please forgive me, but this is just going to give you the idea. So I'm going to have it, so it's roughly about 3/4, and then you would get a ruler. Don't do this, and you'll just get a lovely, so that's going to be the top bit. Now you don't need to do lots of measuring, but what you do need to do now is when you're going to trace the bottom bit, you need to make sure that the bottom bit, if I put this here, you'll understand what I mean, that the distance between the top part and the bottom part is about 5 centimetres, which is roughly about 2 inches. So you need the overlap between the 2 pieces at about 5 centimetres or 2 inches, because obviously you're still going to have to overlap them, and you need to make sure that they're not so close together that you don't get a good close on your hot water bottle cover. So you're going to end up with your front piece, and I always tend to try and label mine. So you've got the front piece, you've got the back piece, number 2, and the back piece number 1 with that little overlap. So that is your basic template. And again, whatever size you do, whether you do this with the straighter sides or you want to do one that has the more angled sides, whatever you choose, you can do. So that's the template. It's actually really easy. I know I've speeded through that and I've not done a super accurate one, but you can see the process and see that it's actually really easy to do. So let's get rid of that scrappy template and let's talk about where we go next. Now I showed some of you some of the fabrics that I'd use, and it's just worth having a little chat about the fabrics. This is an absolutely brilliant project for using up bits and bobs that you've got lying around. This was a piece of, I did a little bit of improvised piecing, so that's why it doesn't look straight. So a bit of improvised piecing, or you might find that you've got leftover blocks. Some people call them orphan blocks. Here was a bit more of improvised stuff that I had here. A lot of those are going to be about 12 by 12, aren't they, if you're doing quilting or scrapbooking. So all you will need to do, depending on the size of your hot water bottle, you may just need to do like I did, where you add a little bit onto the top and a little bit onto the bottom, and you're going to have your piece all sorted and ready to go. This was just a bit of foundation paper piecing that I did. And sometimes you try these techniques and then you think, oh, I love that, and you put it away. What do you do with it? Well, this is the perfect project for you to use. So we've got all our different pieces of fabric. What you're going to need, let me clear these away and get out what we're actually going to need for each bit. Right, let me just clear these away. So, for each bit, you're going to need a front piece of fabric and a back piece of fabric and a piece of thermolam. So for each of these different parts of the template, you're going to need a front piece, an inside piece, and a piece of thermolam. And the difference, I mean, one of the things that I love doing is using up fabric that I don't like. You know, the sort of fabric when you used to buy it and then 2 years later you look at it and you think, what on earth was I thinking? Well, this is a really perfect project because on the inside of the hot water bottle, you're really not going to be able to see. It's there to give a good professional finish, but it doesn't matter. So use up all your ugly fabric on the inside. Now, the other thing that I need to mention before we get sewing, I know there's a lot of talking, but it's the best way of explaining it to you. You can cut out your front and your back and your thermolam. And thermolam is brilliant because what you're going to find is the fabric actually sticks to it really well. So there's less shifting around than some other stuff that you could use. If you are experienced at quilting and you might be thinking, oh my goodness, what is quilting? Quilting just means it's a sandwich. So you've got some sort of wadding or batting and you've got a layer on the top and a layer underneath and you're going to be sewing it down. If you're experienced in doing that, then you might find that you can just cut it out, put it together with clips like I'm doing and then sew. You don't need to quilt it really heavily. It's just to keep it together. Although if you're brilliant at free motion quilting and you want to have a ball, knock yourself out, you can do that. It may be that this is the first type of project that you've ever sewn. So if that's the case, what I would recommend is that you use pieces of fabric that are slightly larger. Sometimes if we haven't got them together, the sandwich together well enough, sometimes you can actually shift slightly. And if you're not used to doing it and you're not sure, the easiest way of doing it is to actually sew it together. So I've got my top piece. Let me just show you. This is a smaller one. And you don't need to cut it quite as large as that. This is for the larger hot water bottle. But cut your fabric and your thermolam and your back piece slightly larger than you need. Put them together, either add pins to them or clips, whatever you want to do. And then all we would do is we would sew them together. So however you want to do this, here I've got one together. You can see how the fabric just fits and it's just lovely, this thermolam. So I've got my fabric. I've got this. If you've never quilted before and you're worried about doing it and thinking, what lines do I follow? How do I do it? Well, if you get a pen, you can get these pens. This one here is just an aqua type of pen, which when you squirt with water, the pen mark disappears. Or you can get chalk lines or whatever. You can get a ruler if you want. If you're not bothered about it being straight, then just sew away. So all we would do is we would get our fabric. Let me just move this a little bit across to, there we are. And then we would get this, and you'll have to excuse me doing this because I'm standing up sewing, which is not particularly. So all you're going to be doing is you're just going to be following the lines. Sometimes you can follow the lines of the fabric, but you would just be sewing, and you're going to be sewing those 3 layers together. And you could follow the lines of the fabric if you didn't want to show your sewing. And that's all we're doing. We're just literally following different lines, and you could sew as little or as much as you wanted. What you will find is if you have sewn it together well, it is easier to cut it out if you've got the fabric all together. So that's what I mean when I talk about quilting. So you would quilt, you could do patterns and all sorts, but you would do that together, get your fabric sandwiched together, and then you would get your template and cut it out so you end up with the shapes together. So let me just show you the next bit. So if I bring this in here, let me just move this stuff out the way. Let's move this back. Okay, so we've got our pieces quilted. This is what I meant by doing your quilting. So you've got your back piece, front piece, you've got your thermolam in the middle, and then I would get my template and draw around it. Once you've done your quilting, you can use whatever pen you like to do the outside, because whatever marks you make, it's going to end up being in the seam allowance, so that's not an issue. So we've got our pieces, so you're going to cut out the 3 pieces that you've got the templates for. So I've got my back bottom piece, I've got my back or my front top piece, and I've got my back or front larger piece. You can see here I just did some diagonal pieces here. So what we need to do now is we need to bind the edges because we've already sandwiched them together, so we just need to get rid of any raw edges. Now you can see here I've added a bit of a bow because I thought actually this would be quite pretty as the front. So all we need to do now is get some binding. Now if you've never done binding before, it's very easy. If you've done binding lots of times, then you can skip this step. You'll know exactly what you're doing. The size of fabric, it doesn't really matter. For here, I've just done 1 3/4 inch, which is about 4 centimeters, but you can do it less if you want. So we're gonna just iron our piece of fabric in half. The piece of fabric that you need just has to be longer, not this much longer, but a little longer than the edge to edge of your template. So we've got that there. So we're going to iron it in half, and then what we would do is we'll take it how we've got our iron bit there, and we'll fold the outer edge into the middle where we've got our fold that we've just created, and then we're just going to iron that into the center like that, and you'd go all the way along there, and then get the other side, which is the top part of the binding, and then we'd fold that bit into the middle. So the middle bits actually meet each other. Just do that carefully. And then we're going to iron that all together. And then the best thing to do is once you've done that, make sure the outer edges meet, and then just give it a little bit of an iron. So we've got our binding. So that's how we're going to get our binding together. So you can see here, we've got no raw edges. We've just got these two bits here. So then what we do is you'd get your next part of, which I've managed to lose, which will be here somewhere. There it is. There we go. So we've got our bottom part of our template, and we're going to get our binding, and we're just going to fit our binding over the top. For those of you that have sewn before and have done something like this is going to make a lot of sense to you. So forgive me if you think I'm being too basic, but I just wanted to make sure for those people that have never done something like this before, that they actually be able to work out what they're doing. So you can see both on the back and the front, I'm just trying to make sure that this middle of the binding is over the top part of the template. So I would take that all the way through. So let's keep clipping. If you've got pins, that's fine. I like clips, but clips or pins, doesn't matter, whatever you've got to hand. Just try and make sure with this that you've got the top of your template part right up to the middle of this. It will just give you a much, much neater result. So I'll take it all the way through, and I'm going to do a bit of speed sewing. There we are. Obviously, you'd make sure that yours was beautifully straight, not like mine, which has got a bit of a wobble on to it. But just take your time. Obviously, the more time that you spend doing this, the better your result is going to be. And then we're just going to pop it on. You can go through twice if you prefer. I'm just going to go along once, but you can have a double layer of stitching. So we're just going to take this all the way along. And sometimes the binding wants to do its own thing, so try and keep your fingers or using a sort of a pokey tool and take it all the way through. So we are securing, there we go, securing our binding onto the top. Okay, so once you've done that, get your, there you are. So once you've got your binding sorted like that, then you can just trim it, trim the edges, and now we're going to put it together. It's actually a really, really easy project to do, and you can get this done in, well, depending on how complicated you have your quilting, you can get one made in an hour or two very easily. So you can make one in an evening. Now we need to position it all together. So what we're going to want to do is, if you lay your hot water bottle main large piece with the right side facing up, and then we're going to put the right side facing down with the back or the front pieces, however you want to have your hot water bottle. Now, this piece here is going to be the outer top piece. So this bit is going to want to go on first, like that. And then you're going to pop your other piece on the top of that. So all we need to do now is just make sure that all of the sides meet. And this is worth taking a little bit of time doing this, because the more time you spend doing these little steps, you're going to end up with a much nicer finished project. So I'm not going to do this all the way around because I think it's fairly obvious what we're doing. What I will do is just do the sides, and then we'll do a little bit of sewing. I'm not going to sew the whole way around because I think it's fairly obvious what I'm doing. There we go. And the great thing about this is you've not got to stop and start anywhere. You just choose where you start, and you're going to be sewing the whole of the way round the hot water bottle cover. Now, the other thing to mention is these bits here, which have got a lot of sort of wear and tear, you're going to be fiddling with them, getting the hot water bottle in and out. I would go backwards and forwards on these a little bit. So it just gives them a little bit more strength. So if we get our hot water bottle cover here, you just get the needle up and pop it down. If you want to use a slightly larger seam allowance because you are finding it hard with the bulk, you can do that. The other thing at this point that I want to mention, let me just, sorry, I don't want to make you all seasick, is if you have got a sewing machine that doesn't cope very well with bulk, then there is another option. So if I just show you this one, I know this isn't cotton, this is more like home, it is cotton, but it's more sort of upholstery weight. If you have got a machine and you think, I may struggle getting the bulk through, some of us have got more basic machines, which I've got one at home, and if it's not very, very thin fabric, it has a hissy fit. So the other option that you can actually do is cut your template out, how I told you and how I showed you before, but actually cut the Thermolam to the same size as your hot water bottle. So if I bring my, just move those out the way. So if I bring my hot water bottle and lay it on here, you can see that I've more or less followed round the edge. Still going to quilt it the same. You will have to make sure that you secure it well in the middle with your pins, because obviously you're not going to want to secure it at the edges because your Thermolam doesn't reach to the edges. But if you do that, then what you'll find is you'll still get the same lovely insulating properties from the Thermolam, but you will have less bulk around the edges. So I did that with this one here. So I've got thinner seams. So if you're a bit worried about your machine coping with sort of thicker amounts of fabric, that is a simple hack that you can do with that. So all we're going to do now is just do some sewing. So let me just get started. Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit careful when I come to these bits here, and then when I get to this edge, because this is where it meets, I'm going to reverse, go again, and keep going. And then when I get to the next bit, I don't know whether you can see here, it's going to be quite hard to see. This is the bottom of the top piece. Then I'm going to do the same. You'll be able to feel it as your foot goes over the top of it. So just go over a few times, and we're just going to go all the way around. So just keep sewing. If you've not done curves before, they are fairly gentle curves. So just go slowly and just gently move your fabric as you're going around the curves. And there we go. And then just keep sewing all the way around. Going around, sorry, my machine's having a moment. It's an old lady, this one, and I love her, but she does have a habit of misbehaving. So I'm going to take it all the way around. I'm not going to sew the whole way, you're going to get the idea. Take it round, keep sewing. And again, you'll feel the bump when you get to this part, which is the bottom. Oh, thanks, Laura. This machine is a Pfaff. It's not a Pfaff, it's a Pfaff, that's the brand. It's a Pfaff 30, and it's a very old and very beautiful machine. But it copes with massive amounts of fabric. It really is a workhorse. So take it. So I'm going to stop there because you get the idea. You're going to go all the way around. Let me just pull it out and take this out. Okay, so imagine that I've sewn all the way around, and now what we need to do is we just need to reduce the bulk around some of these edges. So if I get rid of that one and I bring in this one. Okay, so you can see if I bring this up, this is where if you've got a pair of pinking shears, this will come in really useful, but you don't need to have pinking shears to do this. If I just move this a little back away here. So if you have a look where you've got curves here, what you want to try and do is create little notches, because it just helps when the fabric is bunched together a little bit. It means that you don't have as much bulking around the curves. So all you need to do is grab a pair of scissors, and what I used to do was I used to take my scissors and I would try and cut in, and you know what's going to happen, don't you? You're going to end up with the scissors cutting into the seam allowance. So the best way of doing things is to take your scissors, I don't think you can see here, so that the edges of my scissors are not touching my seam where I've sewn, and then just cut there, because you know that no matter how far you cut, you're not going to end up cutting into your fabric where you've sewn. So again, get to that bit, take my scissors, not to where I've sewn, and just cut those out. So you can do those. The reason that I'm suggesting with the scissors is because we've got quite a lot of bulk here now. Depending on your scissors, the pinking shears may or may not be able to cope. You see there? It's just a little bit too much bulk. If you do it very gradually, bit by bit, you can do that. So you can cope and put pinked edges all the way around. Now, you don't need pinked edges in theory, particularly along the straight lines, but the reason that I'm suggesting it is because you want to try and avoid fraying edges, because we're not finishing these edges here. So the other option is to get a pinking edged rotary blade. So this one is what I tend to use if I've got bulky fabrics. So all I would do, let me just move this out the way. So I'd get my ruler and I line my ruler up just slightly to the left. Sorry, I'm left-handed, so you'd be doing it the other way around if you're right-handed. But just make sure that you cover your ruler over the edge of the sewing. And then all you would do is you just roll along. My blade needs replacing, but you see there, that's actually less stress on your hands than doing your pinking shears. So that's the other option. So you're going to want to go all the way around your edges, cutting them, whether you're just notching them, whether you're using pinking shears, and then we get to the moment where we just turn it inside out. So let me just turn it inside out now. There we go, and this is what I wanted to show you, is another option for decorating it. And it's good if you've got something like a pencil for the outer edges to make sure that you can get the corners out. Can you see there? And there we go. So just going to do this, and then what you would want to do as well, which I'm not going to do, is give it a good press. So the other thing that you can do is to actually add a fun trim to it. I've got some of these left over from Christmas. And so all I did was, once I'd done the part where we got to this here, where we'd actually put the binding on, once I'd done the binding and flipped it through, then I just sewed on, did a little bit of hand sewing, although you could use your machine, and you've got a really, really fun aspect to your hot water bottle cover. So whatever, you can see here, this was another sort of orphan block that I had that I knew I was never going to do anything with, and it's now a really lovely hot water bottle cover. You can obviously tie, you could put some ribbon on, you know, there's lots of different ways to decorate them. You could bead them, you could embroider them. If you're going to embroider them, obviously do it at the stage before you've actually got them sewn, because you'll struggle to do that once you've sewn them all together. But hopefully this gives you a really good idea of how to make your hot water bottle cover. Just to let you know, with Thermolam, you need to wash it at 30 degrees. So don't put it in a hot wash. But what these are going to end up with is being really lovely, snuggly hot water bottle covers. And my mum is probably watching this, but she's going to end up with one of these very shortly. So they make wonderful presents. And, you know, I know heating bills are going to be rising, and we need to try and reduce the amount of money we're spending. And something like a hot water bottle cover, whether it's cold or whether you've just got sick kiddos or you're feeling unwell yourself, it's such a lovely thing to have. And I'm hoping that you will want to have a try at making them yourself. If you do, please put photographs of them on the Vlieseline page. We would love to see what you come up with, because it's really brilliant for inspiring other people to have a go themselves. So whether you're a beginner, and this is perfect for a beginner, or you've done this, you've done lots of sewing, and this would be a walk in the park for you, do have a go. It's a lovely, relaxing sew. And I look forward to seeing what people come up with for their hot water bottle projects. Thanks for being with me. I've really enjoyed sewing with you, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Have a lovely day. Bye.